and to speak to each one of us as only you can. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, let's stand up and let's...
the other day, and it's an old hymn that a lot of people know, and it's kind of a thing that if you've been in church for a long time, you've probably heard it before, but the thing that was going through my mind was just that it's a hymn that was made, I don't know, but it's been a long time ago, and we're still singing the same thing. It's still the same story. It's a song about how we don't deserve His grace, there's nothing we can do, and we're prone to leave Him. We're prone to just go our own way, yet He's still here. And yeah, this is a song that I made a long time ago, but it's the same story. It's the old song, same story. And we still don't deserve it. We still don't deserve His grace. And He's still with us. So let's go in this next song. Let's still worship. Come down to every blessing, to my heart to sing again. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me some that love is song, sung by rainings on the road. Praise of the mountain fixed upon it, mountain God's unchanging love. Here I live beneath the
we understand it. We don't think any questions. I pray that God leads us and changes us. I pray that the songs we just sang weren't just words we said, but that we actually understand the words. And
All right, some quick announcements for you. Some things that are coming up on Sunday morning. We'd love for you guys to be here at 9 o'clock. We do our small group time then. We'd love for you to come and be a part of that. And of course, worship at 10:30. And then on Sunday nights, we do something called Sunday Night Live. Right now, we're doing what the entire church has gone through, this Tell Your Story. If you're participating with us, we're going through the little devotion book that the church provided. This is the last week, week 8, so we're wrapping up this Sunday night with that final week in the devotion book. And then the following Sunday night, a really cool thing that's going to be happening, we're going to do a praise and worship and prayer night in 2 Sunday nights. So not this Sunday, but the next Sunday night, April the 18th, a great time of just praise and worship, and would love for all of you guys to come and be a part of that. So even if you normally don't come on Sunday night, it's cool. Just come that night and be a part of something special that God's going to be doing that evening. So that's coming up, not this Sunday, but next Sunday. Okay? So that's kind of our normal stuff that's going on. Thinking a little bit down the road in next month in May, it's the end of school, and so we're going to have ourselves a get out of school party, all right, on May 30th from 7 to 10. All right, so we're going to be doing that kind of a little bit later that Sunday night, but we're going to have a movie playing, we're going to have food, games, there's a swimming pool. We're going to be over at Gianna's house for our end of the school party, so that's coming up here next month. Also, coming up next month as well, we're doing our recognition of our graduates, and so that's on May 23rd. Make sure you're here that day, that Sunday, as we celebrate our graduates. And then on a Wednesday night prior to that, we're going to have them share a little bit of their amazing wisdom and all of their years of life to share with you guys before everything happens this summer, and some of them have to start leaving and stuff like that. So that's coming up in May as well. Some exciting stuff for our seniors coming up right around the corner. Then I know summer seems like forever, right? But it's not that far. It's not that far at all. And so it's already time to start talking about summer camp. We are going on June 7th through the 11th. We'd love for all of you to come and be a part of summer camp with us. We're going and staying a week at a college, Mary Hardin Baylor, down in Belton, Texas. Beautiful campus. We get to go hang out there. So if you ever want to wondered what it would be like to be in college, come to camp with us. You get to stay in the dorms, eat college food, and have a great time there, in addition to all the fun Jesus stuff that we do as well. So if you've never been to camp, man, come and be a part of it. It is a blast. You guys already signed up, so thank you guys. You're one of the early guys already in. The way you sign up, it's real simple. If you go to our Instagram account, up at the top in the profile, there's a link there to sign up. If you go to the church's website, you can type in the little search bar, Youth Camp, and it'll bring up as well. So lots of different ways that you can get signed up. Question?
No, I was just going to say, next year, you should be a UM, so Lucas and I can cover.
There we go. We'll go all the way to Florida for camp. Actually, I have been to a youth camp out in Dayton, Florida before, yeah. On the beach. It's pretty crazy. There we go. All right. So some stuff that's coming up for you guys in the coming days. All right. We've been talking about this concept of leave your faith at the door. And what I mean by that is that sometimes we have this concept that faith is this kind of turn off your brain, don't think too much about it, close your eyes and blindly just cross your fingers and jump kind of idea. And so that's what I'm saying. Let's leave that at the door, because I don't think that's a good biblical understanding when it talks about faith. I think a better understanding, and I've given you this definition, and it's one of those that I'm going to keep hammering in for you, is that I think a better understanding of faith is this: having confidence that God is who he says he is, and he will do everything that he's promised to do. It's one of those things you want to write that down. If you want to get it tattooed on your arm, that would be awesome. Be like, yeah, I'll help you with that. All right, just kidding. I'm not don't go home and go, hey, Tim said I can get one. That's not what I said. All right, but it is one of those things I would love for you guys to have a real good understanding of this idea of what faith is from a biblical perspective. Confidence that God is who he says he is, and he will do everything that he's promised to do. And so over these last couple of weeks and for the next couple of weeks, I'm trying to give you guys different reasons and explanations of why you can have confidence in believing that there truly is a God. Because I know you have different voices and different people saying, hey, it's kind of crazy to believe in God. I mean, that's kind of naive and silly. Like real educated people, real smart people don't believe in that, okay? We have science and that's what we put our faith and trust in. God is like, whatever. That's what primitive people think, right? And so I know there's a lot of kind of that notion that's out there. And so I am just giving you different examples and trying to build up your sense of confidence that you can be confident in believing in God and specifically in the God of the Bible. And there's lots of good, rational reasons to do so. And so we've looked at some different things, right? We looked at some things called ontological arguments, big fancy word that just simply means like philosophical, logical reasons for God. We looked at last week the cosmological argument, meaning if we looked at the cosmos in the beginning of the universe, it actually points us to that there has to be a beginning, and the only way something can begin is if there is something that is outside of space and time and matter that could cause that beginning. And so as we looked last week, it's very logical and rational and reasonable to believe that that is God. So we're going to continue on with this. And so tonight, I want to talk a little bit about this notion of, is it rational to believe that God exists, by looking at the entire universe as it is right now. Okay? And so this argument comes from a guy by the name of William Paley. Over 200 years ago, he came up with this idea of, if you were walking through the forest, okay, so you're out just having a nice little jog, and you're out there in the forest chasing a butterfly, and you come across a pocket watch, right? Old school pocket watch, the kind that you have to wind up and everything, right? If you came across that, what would be your initial thought of how that pocket watch got there? Someone dropped it, right? And if someone dropped it, how did that watch come into existence? Someone bought it before they dropped it, and they had to buy it from someone who created it, who made it, right? That is a natural thing to think, right? I don't think any of us think when we see a pocket watch, we think, I wonder if the rain and wind just made that happen. Oh, it was erosion. That's just a natural process of the earth, and that's what came out was a pocket watch. Like, right? We don't think that, right? We say that's like way too complex of an idea for a pocket watch to come into existence, right? And that's basically what William Paley said. He says every watch requires some kind of watchmaker. And that's the basis for this argument for God. It's called the teleological argument for God, which is a fancy word for meaning the fine-tuning argument for God, okay? And so basically it just means this, is that every design has a designer. The universe has highly complex design. Therefore, it's logical to come to the conclusion the universe had a designer, right? Just like that pocket watch, we automatically think that there has to be some kind of person who designed it. It didn't just happen by accident. If we look at the universe, it's much more complex than a pocket watch is. So shouldn't we come to the same conclusion? That's the understanding of this argument, right? And so tonight I just want to kind of show you why that is a reasonable thing to think, because our universe that we live in is highly complex. Right? I mean, this whole argument is based on the complexity of the universe. So is our universe complex? Is it really? And I hope and think that it incredibly complex is what our universe is. And so I just want to give you some examples of just how complex our universe is. So I know this is about to sound like we're about to jump into a science class over here for a minute, but just hang with me, right? And you probably all know this because y'all are so much smarter than I am. But here are some things to just show just how complex our universe is just for life to exist, okay? For life to exist, there are these things called because I can speak English. Anthropic principles, meaning that there are certain environmental conditions in our universe that are interdependent. They depend on each other, and all of them have to work in order for life to exist. There's over 100 different one of these like little independent environmental variables. And so I just want to give you some of these, okay? So for example, one, the amount of oxygen that's in our atmosphere. There's 21% oxygen in our atmosphere. If that percentage was any higher, scientists say that fires would spontaneously combust all the time because the oxygen rate would be higher. If it was lower, we would suffocate. We wouldn't have enough oxygen to breathe. So it's exactly at the right amount of oxygen in our atmosphere in order for life to exist. So that's one example of this anthropic principle, that there's these conditions in our universe that are exactly what they have to be in order for life to exist. Another one is atmospheric transparency. That means how much of solar radiation gets through our atmosphere. It's at exactly the right amount. If any more solar radiation got in, we would all burn up. And if it was any less, then the planet would freeze. So it's exactly the right amount. The moon-Earth gravitational pull. If the reaction between gravity between the moon and Earth, if it was stronger, it would cause massive tidal waves all the time so that life couldn't exist. If it was any less, it would actually deteriorate the solar winds that happened around our planet, and life couldn't exist either. The carbon dioxide level. If it was higher than what it currently is, it would be like a greenhouse effect and we would all burn up. If it was less, all the plants would die, and we know that plants produce oxygen, so we would end up suffocating, right? So those are some examples. Here are some more, some kind of interesting ones that I thought. Jupiter, the size that Jupiter is in its orbit around our Milky Way galaxy is in the exact right spot that it basically works like a cosmic vacuum. There's a lot of asteroids and comets and things like that that are hurled through space. And Jupiter is so big with its gravitational pull, it actually sucks them into it. And if it wasn't there, or the size it was, a lot of those would make it through big enough to hit Earth and destroy Earth so that life couldn't exist. So even Jupiter, being where it is and the size it is, allows for life to exist here on Earth. The thickness of the Earth's crust, if it was any thicker, it would absorb too much oxygen and we couldn't live. If it was any thinner, the Earth's crust, more volcanoes would happen all the time and earthquakes would happen all the time, and it would be mass chaos and we couldn't exist either. The idea that there's 24 hours in a day in the Earth's rotation, if it was any different than that, either longer or shorter, the temperature variances would either be too great or not enough from day to night in order to sustain plant life, and we couldn't live. Even the rate of how much lightning occurs is an environmental anthropic principle. If there was more lightning that occurred than what does, fires would break out all the time. If it was less, one of the things that lightning does is with the ions that it produces in the atmosphere, produces nitrogen, which we have to have in our soil in order for plants to grow. So even the rate of lightning is exactly the right rate in order for life to exist. Now that's a lot of crazy stuff. Here's one that we all understand in gravity, right? Gravity, we all get that. If it changed by 0.1 to the 36th power, so like if you wrote down point and then wrote down 36 zeros and then a 1, if it just changed by that much, life could not exist. I mean, that's how finely tuned our Earth is in order for life to exist, and how they are all interdependent, all over 100 of those. If one of them changed, it would completely break down the system that all of them would be affected. And so all of them have to line up exactly right in order for life to exist. There is an astrophysicist named by the name of Hugh Ross who said this. He calculated the probability of 122 of these principles, these variables that we discover in our solar system. And he said, for these things to just randomly happen, the probability that that would happen, that all 122 would be exactly as they are to sustain life, would be 1 in 10 to the 138th power. Right, a 1 with 138 zeros after it. That is the probability that just 122 of these things would line up, that Earth, or that our entire solar system can have life at all, okay? So that is incredibly, incredibly small, right? The probability that it was just random, that it just randomly happened, okay? To take it out of numbers and to give it more kind of like a practical feel, let's go back to that pocket watch. Let's say you found that pocket watch and you took it apart. You took it apart and you came across every single screw and spring and knob and everything. You took it all apart, every single piece. You got a bag, you took all the pieces, dumped it in the bag, shook the bag, and when you opened up the bag, you had a perfectly operating watch. That the watch not only was put together right, but was keeping time. Not only keeping time, but it's at the exact right time. For all of that to happen just because you shook the bag, that's the probability of what they're saying, that the earth just came together by random chance. Okay? So it's not very reasonable, rational to think that that all was just by accident. Nobel Prize winner Arno Pinzazzi, I mentioned him a couple of weeks ago. He's an astronomer. He said this: astronomy leads us to a unique event, a universe which was created out of nothing and delicately balanced to provide exactly the conditions required to support life. In the absence of an absurdly improbable accident, the observations of modern science seem to suggest an underlying, one might even say, a supernatural plan. This is a guy who doesn't believe in God. He is an astrophysicist that won the Nobel Peace Prize for discovering radioactive waves in the atmosphere. And even he says, man, when you start looking at all this stuff, it looks like it was because there was a plan. There was some kind of, and he even used the word a supernatural, outside of nature type of cause for all of this. And so I would say the teleological argument says that the universe is too perfectly and intricately designed for life to exist, for it simply to be a random accident. And so that's like kind of the big picture. Let's go down to the opposite end, right? So that's the big picture of all the different things that make life exist. But if we go down to the very smallest single cell organism, right? A single cell amoeba, right? That microbiological level, those that believe in Darwinism say that's where all life came from a single cell like organism like an amoeba. So if we go all the way down to that and look at that, let me give you this example. If you woke up in the morning and you went to your fridge, and let's say on your fridge, you have those magnet letters, right? Those magnet letters that are in your fridge, and you can move them around and spell things, that kind of stuff. Kind of look like Scrabble tiles or bananagram tiles or whatever. All right, you know what I'm talking about? That'll look like, y'all have never seen those? Like the little letters on, they're all magnets.
We don't have
Yeah, like that, right? So let's just say you did have those on your fridge, right? And you came downstairs and you're pulling out your Cheerios and you're about to eat your cereal for breakfast, but y'all don't use it with milk. And it says, all the letters on your fridge say, take out the trash, Mom. What would you think?
My dad.
Your mom or dad, right, left you a message, right? I don't think any of us would think, well, that's funny. Somebody shut the door really hard and it jumbled the letters and that's what came out, right? I don't think anybody would think, well, dude, I wonder how they shut the door just right so it wasn't too hard that the letters fell off, but it was enough that they kind of moved around and they made sentences or words, but not just words, but it made a sentence, not just a sentence, but it's a sentence that actually makes sense and communicates a message, right? We don't think when something communicates a message that it's just random. We think, okay, if it's specifically communicating a message, there is intent and there is design behind that. Like someone took time to make it communicate something very specific, right? I mean, that's kind of inherent behind any kind of message. We don't think messages are random. We think there's purpose behind it, right? Even scientists who are like out there trying to study if there's alien life, right? They are listening to some kind of message. They're always listening for signals and saying, because there is belief, if we can discover a signal, then there has to be some kind of design or intent behind that signal that's sending it to us, right? So it's inherent behind this idea of messages mean there is some kind of design behind them, right? So what does that matter? Let's go back to our little single cell organism. A single cell amoeba, right? We now understand, thanks to Crick and Watson, about DNA, that we can unpack the DNA of just a single cell amoeba. And when we code out the DNA, it takes up 100 sets of Encyclopedia Britannica. That's how much DNA is contained within one single cell amoeba. So think about that. If you were to write down the code to create a single cell amoeba, the DNA code to create it would take 1,000 encyclopedias worth. That's the message that would have to be relayed in order to create a single cell amoeba. So if we think on your fridge door, the simple message, take out the trash, Mom, has to have a designer behind it, has to come with some kind of intent, how can 1,000 encyclopedia worth of a message not have design and intent behind it? Because if you alter that DNA, any set, any book, any page, any sentence, any word, any single letter out of those 1,000 encyclopedias worth, it wouldn't work. You couldn't get the single cell amoeba. It has to have all of that. So all of that has to be present in order to get even the simplest single cell amoeba that we know of. So does that make sense, what I'm saying? That there is a message there within the DNA that's thousands of books long. And isn't it inherent within every message that we believe that there is purpose and design behind it? So from the huge big picture of all the universe, how everything is lined up exactly like it should be for life to exist, down to the smallest single cell organism that we know of, it still communicates. There is a lot of intention and design to every aspect of our universe. And so I think it is very reasonable, very logical to believe that behind all of that is a designer, because the universe is incredibly complex. And so it's a reasonable conclusion to think that there is a designer behind it all. Romans 1:20 says this, "For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power, and his divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that men are without excuse." Paul says in Romans, man, look at creation. There's evidence of God there. So I don't think we should be scared or afraid of scientists or philosophers or whatever. I think we embrace it, because I think God is real and true, and scientific discoveries only point us to him, and we don't have to run away in fear of things. For another illustration that I read about trying to get a picture of what it takes for the entire universe to be finely tuned in order for life to exist, it would be as if I took one grain of sand and I put a little X on it, however you do that on a little tiny grain of sand. Let's say I could, right? And then I went to the Sahara Desert and I put it somewhere in that Sahara Desert, which if you don't know, the Sahara Desert is over 3.5 million square miles big. And then I took you up in an airplane, blindfolded you, we flew over the desert, and I just pushed you out at a random time and said, okay, blindfolded, you've got one chance to find that one piece of grain that I marked. 3.5 square million miles worth of sand. Could you do it? But not only do it once, you would have to do it 3 times in a row. And that's the probability of the universe randomly coming together the way it has so that life can exist. So which one of those takes more blind faith? To believe God is behind it all, or that it was all just random chance? I have a video that kind of wraps up this whole kind of thing. It probably does a much better job than I do. So go ahead and show that for us.
From galaxies and stars, down to atoms and subatomic particles, the very structure of our universe is determined by these numbers. These are the fundamental constants and quantities of the universe. Scientists have come to the shocking realization that each of these numbers has been carefully dialed to an astonishingly precise value, a value that falls within an exceedingly narrow, life-permitting range. If any one of these numbers were altered by even a hair's breadth, No physical, interactive life of any kind could exist anywhere. There'd be no stars, no life, no planets, no chemistry. Consider gravity, for example. The force of gravity is determined by the gravitational constant. If this constant varied by just 1 in 10 to the 60th parts, none of us would exist. To understand how exceedingly narrow this life-permitting range is, imagine a dial divided into 10 to the 60th increments. To get a handle on how many tiny points on the dial this is, compare it to the number of cells in your body, or the number of seconds that have ticked by since time began. If the gravitational constant had been out of tune by just one of these infinitesimally small increments, the universe would either have expanded and thinned out so rapidly that no stars could form, and life couldn't exist, or it would have collapsed back on itself with the same result: no stars, no planets, and no life. Or consider the expansion rate of the universe. This is driven by the cosmological constant. A change in its value by a mere 1 part in 10 to the 120th parts would cause the universe to expand too rapidly or too slowly. In either case, the universe would again be life prohibiting. Or another example of fine-tuning. If the mass and energy of the early universe were not evenly distributed to an incomprehensible precision of 1 part in 10 to the 10 to the 123rd, the universe would be hostile to life of any kind. The fact is, our universe permits physical, interactive life only because these, and many other numbers, have been independently and exquisitely balanced on a razor's edge. Wherever physicists look, they see examples of fine-tuning. The remarkable fact is that the values of these numbers seem to have been very finely adjusted to make possible the development of life. If anyone claims not to be surprised by the special features that the universe has, he's hiding his head in the sand. These special features are surprising and unlikely. What is the best explanation for this astounding phenomenon? There are 3 live options. The fine-tuning of the universe is due to either physical necessity, chance, or design. Which of these options is the most plausible? According to this alternative, the universe must be light permitting. The precise values of these constants and quantities could not be otherwise. But is this plausible? Is a light prohibiting universe impossible? Far from it. It's not only possible, it's far more likely than a light permitting universe. The constants and quantities are not determined by the laws of nature. There's no reason or evidence to suggest that fine-tuning is necessary. How about chance? Did we just get really lucky? No. The probabilities involved are so ridiculously remote as to put the fine-tuning well beyond the reach of chance. So, in an effort to keep this option alive, some have gone beyond empirical science and opted for a more speculative approach, known as the multiverse. They imagine a universe generator that cranks out such a vast number of universes that, odds are, life-permitting universes will eventually pop out. However, there's no scientific evidence for the existence of this multiverse. It cannot be detected, observed, measured, or proved. And the universe generator itself would require an enormous amount of fine-tuning. Furthermore, small patches of order are far more probable than big ones. So the most probable observable universe would be a small one, inhabited by a single, simple observer. But what we actually observe is the very thing that we should least expect: a vast, spectacularly complex, highly ordered universe, inhabited by billions of other observers. So even if the multiverse existed, which is a moot point, it wouldn't do anything to explain the fine-tuning. Given the implausibility of physical necessity or chance, the best explanation for why the universe is fine-tuned for life may very well be it was designed that way. A common sense interpretation of facts suggests that a super intellect monkeyed with physics and that there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature. The numbers one calculates from the facts seem to me so overwhelming as to put this conclusion almost beyond question. There is for me powerful evidence that there is something going on behind it all. It seems as though somebody has fine-tuned nature's numbers to make the universe. The impression of design is overwhelming. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they reveal knowledge.
So the point of us doing this tonight is not, I don't expect you to like learn any of those facts and those numbers and go, oh, I'm gonna go home and do that math problem. Like that is not the expectation tonight. Again, it's this idea of, man, I want you to walk with confidence in your faith and not to be intimidated by other people, even if they may disagree, but for you to have this quiet confidence in yourself and your faith be strong, that you have confidence that God is who he says he is, and he will do everything that he's promised to do.
In my sorrow and dead in my sin, lost without hope and place to be. Your love made a way to let mercy come in. When death was arrested, I began. Ash was redeemed, only beauty remains. My open heart was given away. My mourning grew quiet, my feet rose to dance. When death was arrested, my life began. For your grace,